Okay, so, after having the rose-tinted glasses that was the original Bioshock shattered, I had a hard time convincing myself that Bioshock 2 is going to be any different. Honestly, I was expecting to walk into another game that in its day was good, but hasn't aged gracefully. But at the same time, I still remember my brother's excitement from when it released. You play as the Big Daddy in this one, and it wouldn't be fair of me to just judge this game on its predecessor. I should point out that most of this review is going to be comparing and contrasting the original Bioshock, so watching my review of that first might be ideal. Am I doing this plugging other content right? Good enough? No, I'm not going to tell them to like and subscribe. People know how YouTube works, and literally everyone else does that. Should I start making the ridiculous surprise face thumbnails while I'm at it? Developers hate them. Watch this review of Bioshock 2 to learn how to... Sorry about that. To set things up, we start off with a cinematic from your point of view as a Big Daddy, running around with your little sister, and then protecting her from the citizens of Rapture. Alright, the hype is setting in a little bit. You know, until I get mind controlled, and forced to shoot myself. So I instantly went from hyped for some power fantasy goodness to helpless in 10 seconds. And then one of the first enemies I come across is a big sister that is even more powerful than me. Talk about some MCU's Hulk as a plot device. As if I wasn't already discouraged about going into this game. Still, starting off with the iconic drill hand, compared to the wrench in the original Bioshock, feels different. You aren't just a guy scrounging for a way to protect himself from the chaos you've been installed into. No, you are purpose-built for this. You aren't Officer Alex Murphy. You are the RoboCop. Even the visceral, blunt force trauma of the old 1-2 punch feels tame, in comparison to augering through a paralyzed enemy. Whoa, let's pause for a second. I get Electro Bolt as a Big Daddy? How much power creep does this game have that accessing plasmids makes sense?
The rate of sister loss has become unacceptable as Big Daddies are brought down like elephants under a pack of hyenas.
Oh, okay, fair enough. And I can tell you, my health is seriously lacking compared to what I came to expect when I was on the opposite side of these fights. You aren't that juggernaut bullet sponge that was fought in the first Bioshock. You feel human. I mean, from a gameplay and balance point of view, this makes sense. But I still find myself irrationally disappointed by how lacking I am in the tanky category. I have to say that I was instantly much more invested in the storyline of Bioshock 2. This game just felt more personal. I wasn't playing some random jack-off colony guy. I had a little sister to save. And not just any dog-eating Rapturian, but Eleanor. And I couldn't help but feel like I had a duty to save all the little sisters I came across. Then building off of the drill hand, all of the weapons feel like they were tuned up. The rivet gun feels like it has much more stopping power than the pistol, and the 50 cal's accuracy doesn't feel quite as damning as the machine gun. Across the board, gunplay felt tighter in Bioshock 2. Changing ammo types felt much smoother, and the addition of a melee attack without having to change to the wrench really adds fluidity to the combat. And I can't speak highly enough about the hack dart gun also. It does take away a little bit of that puzzle aspect, trying to sneak around the cameras in the first game, but this was another way the game captures the feeling of how purpose-built you were for Rapture. Another major upgrade from the first was the control and key binding options. While the default layout is terrible, which is just a case of the game predating a more normalized modern setup, I was able to customize key bindings to offset most of this. I am going to point out how goofy the plasmid in left hand, weapon in right was for me though. I don't know why my brain couldn't comprehend this, and even though I knew the left click was the fire key, like, I don't know, every single other shooter ever, in the heat of the moment, seeing the plasmid in the left hand made me want to left click to use it. This probably wouldn't be a problem with the controller, since the right trigger is always the fire button, and I'm guessing the left trigger is for plasmids. But having compound inputs might have been more effective for my brain. For example, being able to hold shift and left click to use the plasmids. Originally, looting felt better in this game than the first also. I remembered thinking early on about how much more concentrated loot was searching through splicers and containers. But as I got further into the levels, this reverted back to the similar quantities of the first game. This may seem nitpicky, but just give me a full magazine of whatever bullet type. Don't give me a handful of them each time I loot someone. Okay, and a wallet that has a maximum amount it could hold? In what world does that happen? And since I am nitpicking, why did the enemy's Tommy guns give me 50 cal ammo, when the Thompson machine gun uses 45s? That's right, I'm being that pedantic, about a fictional video game, set in an underwater city, where I play a robot that can cast lightning and fire out of his hands. Now, as much as I like what they changed from the first, there were still some things that needed talked about. What did they do to the hacking minigame? While I liked that I didn't have to worry about impossible hacks, hacking was still my favorite part about Bioshock. And they knew exactly what they did taking that away from me, trying to butter me up with the free gifts from hacking. I don't care if it makes more sense having your character still in the middle of the action while hacking. I want my pipe dream. I also felt the camera mechanics were a little off. For one, with the camera equipped, a lot of the screen is obscured, to the point where I didn't want to keep it on if I wasn't planning on using it, which meant I would only equip it in the heat of battle to snap a picture, and I think it goes without saying, that wasn't exactly the ideal time. Admittingly, the first game's take multiple pictures of enemies was, in hindsight, an obtrusive mechanic towards combat also. Still, I found myself rather annoyed with Bioshock 2's picture then auto-equipping your previous weapon. Alright, let me explain. When you try to take a picture of an enemy that you already took a picture of, the auto-swap doesn't occur, so you are left standing there in a firefight, taking damage while holding a camera. And it was a pretty regular occurrence where I wasn't sure if I took a picture of the enemy or not. Now, the other mechanic to understand is when using the keyboard, the number key equips a weapon, but pressing it again cycles which ammo is loaded. Well, when I would try sneaking a quick picture while fighting, I wouldn't know if it was going to be successful, and would naturally just try to equip a weapon. Which, if the auto swap happened, I would end up switching to ammo types that were less effective or using up premium ammo in overkill situations. And unfortunately, the splicers could still be difficult for me to see in this game. I was really hoping for improvements to the contrast of the enemies compared to their environment, but this was one of the few areas that Bioshock 2 really doesn't feel like it made any improvements. Enemy voices could also be very difficult to tell which direction they were coming from, and this would lead to some very hairy situations protecting the Little Sisters while they were extracting Adam. And one more just me problem. For some reason, this game liked turning off my video recorder. While I know this isn't going to really affect anyone else, I just feel like it should be mentioned for transparency's sake. So after 10 hours of gameplay, I can say that Bioshock 2 has addressed and improved almost every complaint I had with the original. While maybe still a little rough around the edges compared to a more recent release, I think this game is worth playing. I am running into a pickle with this recommendation though, as I don't know how much of it comes from being genuinely a good game versus just being better than the original. And I think it is pretty obvious how much the first game's shadow hung over this review, as almost every point discussed was a comparison to the first game. And that means I can't fully recommend Bioshock 2 on its own merits. So I will just put it like this. If you, like me, didn't care for the original Bioshock, don't entirely write off Bioshock 2. It might surprise you. Thanks for watching.